Talking Heads. Thank you very much for joining me today, and we've got 2 or 3 decent topics for you to talk about. And unusually, we've got a studio guest for the first part of the programme because people in the north are upset at changes to the bus service. From April the 6th, apparently, the hourly bus to Jurby is going to be dropped and replaced with a Connect Village service requiring 24 hours advance notice. Given that we're all being encouraged to use public transport rather than our own cars, it seems a bit of a strange decision, especially somewhere isolated and with a high proportion of people reliant on a regular bus service. Louise Whitelegg joins me in the studio. She's leading the protest. So, Louise, tell me a little bit more about this.
Afternoon, Stu.
Hiya. Did you just sort of hear this all of a sudden, or was there any consultation?
Well, I had a phone call from a pal of mine who lives up in Jurby, and he's really, really reliant on the buses.
Yeah.
And she got the bus on Monday, and it was just arising from conversation with the bus driver. And the bus driver said, "Are you ready for the dial ride after April?" And she said, "What?
Yeah.
How am I going to manage?" And then she got on the telephone to me, and I had to dig into it, and I thought, this is just out there. This is not on. And then since then, as I've done a bit of digging, it's snowballed, and so many people have been in touch. Just loads and loads of questions about how it's going to work. But the main thing is this 24-hour business before and when you need to dial a ride.
Well, that's all right if you live a fairly scheduled lifestyle, but you know, it's not very good if you want to do anything spontaneously, is it?
Well, or even go to the doctors. You know what it's like. If you need to go to the doctors, they say, can you ring at 8:30 in the morning?
Yeah.
And if the surgery is not up in Jurby, you've got to go to Ramsey. So you've got to ring up at 8:30 in the morning, and then you can't get your transport up there. For me, I mean, I hate inequality. It really drives me crazy. And I've got this little bugbear of mine, which is silence is collusion. We've all got a responsibility to stand up and speak out.
Yeah.
So when my friend got in contact about this, I thought the immediate thing that sprang to mind was this has so got to be against the Equalities Act, because the Equalities Act, you're not allowed to do anything that disproportionately affects any one particular group. And to me, knowing the folks who get the bus in the times that we're talking about, we're talking mostly about women and children. You've got a kid up at Ramsey Grammar School, they're sick, they want to come home. How are they going to get home?
Yeah.
You want to go to the doctors. The kids want to go and socialise.
Yeah.
And you know how spontaneous the kids can be. How are they going to do that? So I've done a bit of digging, as you do. I like my reading. And it's actually been mooted and floated around for a while, but it was discussed. I was looking at the Hansard for June 2018, and it was discussed in some detail then. And it looks like it's come from this SAVE programme that the government's got. There's a £6 million figure that pops up a couple of times. So they reckon they want to save £6 million through the SAVE programme, and they reckon that 50% of those savings can come from public transport. Now, looking back at the news releases, it actually cost £6 million to buy these Mercedes buses that we've got. Yeah. So we've got 33 single-decker buses and 19 minibuses. And it's these that they look like they're trying to reuse. And what I want to know is, where's the public consultation? Who's asked? And another bugbear for mine is, where's the empathy from the government gone?
Yeah.
Somebody's made a decision here and not put themselves in the place of the people who use the public transport and need to use the public transport.
It strikes me that that's been the modus operandi of this administration from the start. That you know, it's almost as though they were all elected, taken into a dark room by the Chief Minister and said, right, boys and girls, here's what we need to do over the next 5 years. We need to save a big chunk of money. We need to find ways to make more money because we've got this huge deficit in the public sector pensions thing or whatever, and we've not got the VAT money coming in that we used to do, so we've got to sort things out. And that's kind of the overriding principle for everything that government seems to be doing to me. They've either got to save money or make money, and things like services, that the interest in that comes fairly secondary to saving money, it seems.
I could cry. I could really cry with the frustration of it all, because it's the people who live on the Isle of Man that are feeling the consequences and that suffer as a result of this. Take it back. You remember when they first built the prison, and they muted taking it up to Jurby.
Yeah.
And there was so much outcry, wasn't there? And a lot of people were saying, well, how are we going to get up there to visit people? And one of the things they said when they built the prison up in Jurby was, don't worry, there'll be the public transport. We'll make sure you can access and visit the prison. So it just seems to me left hand and right hand doesn't know what they're doing. You mentioned earlier the environmental considerations. Yeah. A lot of countries, a lot of forward-thinking nations are starting to have free public transport because they want to encourage public transport.
Yeah.
I don't know of anywhere else where they're scrapping transport.
Yeah.
In fact, they've tried this dial-a-ride service in rural places in the UK and it's proven not to work.
Well, it's one of those things that seem... I don't know, I've not got an axe to grind on this. It seems to be a good idea in principle, but it seems to be the sort of thing that would be fraught by, you know, the actual practice of getting it organised to everybody's satisfaction. It just seems to be too big a job to me. I don't know much about public transport. I'll hold my hands up. So just remind us what we're talking about. This is the bus from Ramsey to Jurby, is it? Ramsey
to Jurby, yes.
And so does it go anywhere in between?
It's the Owley Lifeline. Yes, there's different routes around the north. Now, this dial-a-ride system has already been introduced in Andreas and Bride, but I've spoken to people in Andreas, and they are so outraged by it and disappointed. And when they spoke to me this morning, they were saying, you know, good on you for saying something.
Well, Andreas, I mean, there are a good few people living there, so a bus service I would have thought would be essential for Andreas. Bride a bit less so. It's 14 people in a church, isn't it?
Well, but there is also social housing up in Bride.
Yes.
And one wouldn't want to put everybody in the same basket, but you are generally more reliant on public transport and less likely to drive.
Yes.
So if you don't drive and you live in these remote places, what you're doing is you're talking about social isolation. And funnily enough, the SAVE report did actually identify that as one of the potential problems. And it did say, and they did discuss this in Tynwald in June 2018, they said that there will be careful consideration of the social impacts of these changes. I'd like to see that report.
Well, that might be in the same place as the social impact report on the closing of sub-post offices and things, which people say, you know, it's a community centre. We need that.
Yes.
Well, you know, obviously we're going to look very carefully and make sure that it's not going to, you know, I don't know that it's going to make any difference at all, is it?
Well, do you know, it's these social services that when you look at the initial headline costs of things, it looks like it's an easy thing to slaughter, if you want, for a better word. However, these are the things that underpin the society, they underpin the support that we're supposed to have. It's public transport.
Yes.
We don't want to put people in further social isolation. You've got a lot of elderly people living in these areas. We know it's more cost effective to keep these elderly people in the home, whereas if you systematically break down the social structures that elderly people rely on in the local community, like the post offices, like the bus stops, you know, it's going to be so much easier then to have to move into sheltered housing, which we know is not really the way we want to go because it's not available.
Devil's advocate.
Stu? Never.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Is this just a more sensible use, more responsible use of resources? Because if the bus companies say, well, yeah, it's all very well saying that we need a bus service to Jurby every hour or whatever, you know, there were 3 people on it. It never even approached covering its cost. It's not viable to offer that kind of a regular bus service, and that's why we've changed. These
type of social services aren't about covering your costs. It would be a nice to have if you covered your costs. That would be a bonus. But we're talking about social mobility. We're talking about people to be able to go into town. For example, there's a lady I know who's on a 0 hours contract. So she gets a telephone call in the morning and says, can you come into work today?
And the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer's now going to be no. So you've got somebody who was trying to be economically mobile and working, but on a 0 hours contract. And now because she has to book 24 hours for a bus in advance, then she's having to turn down that work opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's so many unanswered questions, and I would really like to see a study done. I realise they've done this in Andreas and Bride and it's rolled out there. I realise that they're talking about it, having it as a year, as a trial. But I want to see the study that's been done behind this. I want to see the social impact study. I want to see the demographics of the people who use the buses. I would like them to defend the fact that, as I said, I think it's against the Equalities Act. Okay. I think you're disproportionately targeting women and children with this move. All right.